Hey folks, Rich Bonaduce back here again chatting about Roland stuff. I'm actually addressing some questions that came up about my other video wherein we discussed TD-30 or TD-50, and I like the TD-30. A couple people pointed out that I was wrong about something, and I was, but not about what you think. But I wanted to address it because it's pretty important. I talk in Oreo sense. I give you what I think right up front, then I give you the stuff, then I remind you, just kind of cap it at the end. By the way, if you stick around all the way through, I have what I think is a really cool tip for you at the end. So just to be upfront with the whole Oreo thing, so if you want to move on, you can. You don't have to watch a whole video if you want to. Was I spreading misinformation about the sounds in the brain? No. No, I wasn't. And now I'll explain why. But before I get to that, there was one other thing I was flat out wrong about. I had mentioned that the numbers corresponding to the pads and symbols correspond to the size of those pads and symbols. I think that's how it used to be at one point. PD8s used to be 8 inches, PD10s were 10 inches, PD12s were 12s, and same thing went with the symbols. For instance, this VH12 is 12 inches in diameter, but the VH11 is an 11, and I'm not sure if the new digital ride is called something 18, even though it's 18 inches. So it might have been true at one point that the numbers corresponded to the sizes. I don't think it's true anymore. Roland, how about you go back to that? Because it makes sense.
My car has one of those door handles. A lot of people have them, I think, now. The kind of door handles which is recessed a little bit into the door and your fingers actually go in a little before they grab it. Don't you like that? I like that. That's why they're not going to make it anymore. They found out we like that.
Anyway, companies do that all the time. Let's have something that makes sense, but people like that. Let's get rid of it. I don't know why. Anyway, so let's get to the other thing. I didn't like the TD-50 for a few reasons, maybe 3 or 4 reasons. One was the price as compared to the TD-30, which is pretty inarguable. It's not misinformation to say one costs a whole lot more than the other. I did mention that if you find a demo version like I did, you might be able to get rid of that discrepancy. I also didn't like that the digital snare and the digital ride mean that you have to have an extra stand for your snare. I like to have everything attached to the cage that I can, so I can basically pick up the cage and walk away with almost my entire kit. But the newer digital snare that you use with the TD-50 does not have a bracket on the front of it, so you can't even mount it to your cage at all. It's also pretty big. I think it's about 5.5 by 14. I mean, it's a meaty snare, but you need a meaty snare stand too, and the less to carry around, the better. Also, even though the hi-hat is really cool, I think it's a VH13 or something like that, it is really nice. It's 2 cymbals, it goes together, it's super expressive. It requires a hi-hat stand, so there's a whole other stand there you need. And of course, the digital ride that comes with it is 18 inches in diameter. Even though it's big and nice, it doesn't fit in any cases that Roland makes. And of course, all those things are very expensive. You can get one of these lesser cymbals right here, but the whole TD-50, the point of it is that it's digital snare and ride and and all that. So you have to buy the upgrade kit. You have to buy the digital snare, the digital ride, and that's a whole lot of money. And then you got to buy the stands for it and all that stuff. I didn't really like that either. The other thing I didn't like was that when you use the digital ride and snare, it cancels out the analog inputs for the ride and snare. So you can't have a BT1 over here and have an extra, say, side snare or use a whole other crash ride 15-inch whatever, triple triggered ride and have all these extra sounds. Using the digital inputs actually cancels out those other analog inputs. Again, not misinformation. The thing that this guy took issue with was I was saying I didn't like the sounds, which is an opinion, by the way. But the thing that I really didn't like about the sounds is the lack of them. I think in the TD-30 I showed you there was something like, I don't know, between 15 and 20 different hi-hat sounds that you start with. Jazz hi-hats, crisp hi-hats, edge hi-hats. K, mediums, all these different kind of hi-hats. And in the new one, you really only have, in the TD-50, you have 2. You also used to have a lot of different kinds of snares. Wood snares, metal snares, acrylic snares. In the new TD-50, I think you only have 5. to start with. Those are the, as he calls them, templates, the base sounds, the base samples. And it goes all the way down the line for all the other stuff. You used to have 50 different kinds of tom sets that you could go through, bass drums and all that. And in the TD-50, I think because it requires more processing power, I don't know, they just couldn't have all those sounds in there. Now what this guy was trying to say was, with the prismatic this and changing all the parameters, that's not true. You can make any sound you want. I disagree, and I'll tell you why. And I've watched the videos from various companies, Drum Expressions or whatever, and how to do it. And interestingly enough, you have to go buy their stuff to do what they want you to do. No, I've already spent $2,000 on the brain. I'm not buying anything else. I don't like that. I don't understand why you can't get this to sound good without all the other stuff. I'm a drummer, not a programmer. I don't want to sit here for a half hour try to tune in one snare sound. But I will tell you what I do all the time when I build the kit, like this one. This one, let's see, let's pick one out. This is a stainless steel snare, and these toms are maple, okay? So that's what that sounds like, and I add a little bit of ambience if I want to. So I made that, and what I did, and I made all these, so what I did is I kind of start with the toms, and I go, what do I want? Do I want birch? Do I want maple? Do I want babinga? What is it? So I have a little throat thing going on. So anyway, so I start off with those toms, and I pretty much put them in the traditional positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, bass drum. And I had the bass drum match. I do. You can change it all up. You can make that maple and that birch and that babinga and that acrylic. You can do it if you want. I like to go, oh, I want a birch kit. And I have a birch kit, and I call it birch kit. And then I make a maple kit, and then I make a babinga kit. So I just know what they are. And you can make the snare match if you want to. You know, grab the birch snare or change it up and grab the metal snare, whatever you like. Stainless, brass, titanium, whatever it happens to be. And then of course you go to cymbals, and I oftentimes mimic the cymbals that I have on my acoustic kit so I know where things are. Over here is usually a 16-inch medium. Over here is usually an 18-inch medium thin. Over here is some kind of big washy thing like an 18-inch fast crash or whatever. And then I'll put a splash up on the top, a crash up on the top of that one, and the ride is up here with the bell and the whole thing. So I have 3 crashes, 2 effect cymbals, and a ride. And of course, like we talked about before, 2 hi-hats. On both sides, controlled by 1 pedal, 2 different sounds. Awesome. Then I have the BT1s around. I have to change out these chords right now, but I have 3 of them. And what I usually do is over here, I have some kind of a percussion thing. And over here, I have an extra floor tom, so I can go dig-a-dig-dig over here. And this is usually some kind of extra sound, whatever. Maybe it's pertaining to a song I play with that kit. Hand claps, some kind of sound effect or something like that. And if not, it's just a stack cymbal of some kind. So I have fun with it. So once I pick the bass sounds, I play with all the parameters from there. And there are hundreds of different parameters for each drum. For instance, you can change the heads, coated, pinstripe, clear. You can change the muffling, add just a little bit of tape or a whole lot of tape or like just a blanket on the thing, a weight in your bass drum. You can change the resonance of the drums relative to the snare drum so that they buzz a little. Hear that little buzz? And then you can crank that up if you want to so that they really buzz or that they don't buzz at all. You can change the depth of the shell. So even though you might start off with a 10-inch tom here, you can make it go and just stretch it out to like 20 inches or whatever. There's all kinds of things that you can do with the toms to change their bass sound. Same way with the snare, you can change the looseness or the tightness of the snares, or the virtual snares. You can add sounds to the rims. You can add tambourine on the edge. You can add cowbells to the edge. You can do that with let me see if I got something handy. There you go. You hear the tambourine on that? This one doesn't have it. So if I want to, I can play a straight up hi-hat sound and then throw in the tambourine one if I want to. So you can have two different sounds, and you can do all that kind of stuff. And of course, you can change the tuning on all these kits too. Here's my, let's see, this is the Rude kit, right? And here's the snare. So you can go and you can just see, I don't know if you can tell, but it's on 0 right now. Let's see if I can turn that towards you. Well, it's 0 right now. But then I can crank it up and just tweak it. Or drop it down to nothing. I mean, that's great. And of course, you can do this for all of the drums. And the bass drum even adds an extra thing. Of course, there's the tuning, but on the shell, you can make it deep, etc. But you can even change the kind of beater. This is wood. This is plastic. This is felt. Now, you might not be able to tell the difference on this recording, but you can, the plastic and the felt definitely deliver a slightly different attack. And I didn't even get into the cymbals yet. 16-inch medium, I said, right? You can make that thing a 42-inch if you want to. Then you can add rivets, and then you can do all kinds of stuff. And again, I didn't even get into the mixer. You can change the volume of each individual pad. Trigger, you can change the volume between the trigger, the head and the rim. You can change the panning. I pan my drums. I put the bass, snare, and the hi-hats in dead center. And then I take each one of these, and as they move around me, I move them 2. So this is R2, right? To my right, 2. Right 4, right 6, right 8, right 10. Left 2, left 4, left 6. That's as far as I go on that side. And I move them so that when you mix it, you give the guy those chords. Out there, it sounds a little bit more legit. When I hit something in the middle, it comes out of both speakers right at you. When I hit something over here, it comes out a little bit more on this side, just like it would. It sounds awesome in headphones, by the way, and sounds great on recordings. Then you can change the volume of the kit, the minimum volume, the maximum. And again, I didn't even get into the ambience. What kind of room is your kit in? Is it a big room? Is it a square room? Is it a hall? Is it a cathedral? Oh God, is it made of plaster? Is it made of wood? Where are your mics on the kit? Where are your mics on the snare? Is it right in the bass drum, outside of it, or way across the room? What kind of mic is it? Then you get to the multi-effects and the comp and the EQ, and you can add reverb and all kinds of, it's ridiculous what you can do to change the sounds of these drums. And dude, I know all that. I do it all the time. Here's another kit for you. This one I call crude. This one I call rude, because it is. Just nasty. And then I can turn right around and do this little maple one. They have different sounds. One is big and one is, chilled out, and it's great. But I changed all that stuff. I know how to change the sounds of the drums. I think he was misunderstanding what I was saying because he called them templates, and it's true. Except it's a template for a birch snare drum. You're not gonna, even with all that crap in there, you're not gonna change. In fact, here, I'll show you. A birch, what is this? That's a maple, okay. You're not gonna change this maple snare, okay, into this titanium snare. Did you hear that? Hear that pangy stuff? That's a maple snare. Now it's maple with all the stuff I did to it. And here's a titanium. You're not going to change one sound into the other. So when you add all of those effects to a birch snare drum, you're just affecting a birch snare drum. You're not changing it into a maple snare drum. You're not changing it into an acrylic snare drum. You're not changing it into a titanium snare drum. And what made me mad about the TD-50 as opposed to the TD-30 is that even though the TD-50 has some extra editing parameters because it's new, it only has so many bass sounds to start with. You no longer have, again, 10 hi-hats to play with, you have 2. Now you can change them up in hundreds of ways, but you're not going to change the one into the other. You're not. A caveat there. If you can somehow get this snare, the maple, to sound like this titanium, it's probably going to take you forever to do it. I'm a drummer, not a programmer. I don't want to sit here and go, how do I get the maple snare to sound like a titanium? No, I don't want to spend more money to take more time to change less sounds into more sounds. Think of it as an Excel spreadsheet with the cells going across and then the columns going up and down. So you got some wood snares, right? You got maple and birch and babinga. Then you got some metal snares like a brass and steel and titanium. Then you have some other ones like acrylic or whatever. Well, those are 6 or 7 snares that you can then change in the column with all those parameters in all those different ways. Change the size and change the heads and the resonance and all this and that. But you're not going to change one into the other. You're not going to make that maple snare sound like an acrylic snare. And again, even if you can with a whole bunch of tweaking, I don't want to volunteer for that. I'm certainly not paying more money to do it. So what they ended up doing is they gave you less templates to work with up front. But you're still not going to be changing an acrylic snare into a titanium snare. In fact, if that was the way it worked, that all you have to do is start off with one sound and you can make it anything you want, why give me 10 sounds? Why give me 5 snares if you only need one to change it into anything? They gave you 5 instead of 15 because I guess they had to lose some room for all that digital stuff. I really don't know. In fact, I don't care. It's not my problem. I'm buying the TD-30 and getting all of those snares and all that stuff to work with. I mean, here, just for instance, and this is what I played with myself. I'm going to go through here for a second and just play a couple kits for you. By the way, this is called 50s. Got skank stuff. So I changed all that stuff to make these kits sound different. Now, just for fun, this one's a light bass drum. That's a hall cut bass drum. That's a power birch bass drum. That's a big open bass drum. That's a V light bass drum. That's a 22-inch birch bass drum. That's a fusion bass drum. That's a standard maple, a solid maple. That's a birch wet. I mean, I've already gone through in just those kits more bass drums standard that is available on the TD-50. So by the time you change those with all those parameters, that's a whole bunch of different drums. So no. No, I know what I'm talking about. And again, even if I don't to a certain extent, even if one of those guys at V Expressions or those programmers can get a maple snare to eventually sound like a titanium snare, I don't want to go through all that. And I'm certainly not going to spend extra money to volunteer to take the extra time to change one sample into a completely different sample. I don't think that's how it works. I think they have a sample of a birch and of a babinga and of a maple and of a this and that. And then you can change those things with all those parameters. But basically, it's that sound you're changing. You're changing the sound of a birch drum. You're changing the sound of a titanium snare. You're not changing the birch into titanium. That's not how it works. I did decide to purchase some of those V expressions, and they are pretty cool. I don't like everything they do. A lot of them are really loud. Like when I plug them in, they're incredibly loud, easily sitting at like 120, and the thing only goes to 127. I drop it down quite a bit, and I find that the sounds are better, especially when you put them through a mixer. And they even say so, hey, we mix a lot of this stuff really wet so that you can dial some stuff back, and maybe that's part of it. I don't like the way they pan them. I pan them differently, like I mentioned, but they do have some really cool sounds, and I think that they do a lot of that headache work for you. You know, for instance, I watched a video about making a John Bonham kit. And what the guy did is he sat and listened to Bonham, and then he sat and listened to all these different drums and picked out the snare from this kit and a bass drum from that kit and a toms from this kit, and then changed them up and changed them and all that stuff. If you want to keep doing that, fine. I want to play. But if you want to do all that stuff, go ahead. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of those sounds are in here already, and you can change them from here. I don't really like that I have to go elsewhere and add sounds to a brain I already paid a few $1,000s for. It drives me nuts. But I'm very glad that the TD-30 has a lot of different sounds in it to work with right off the bat. And that's what I mean when I say that there are less sounds to work with in the TD-50. And there are. And even though you have all those parameters, you're not changing a birch into a titanium. Doesn't work that way. So thanks for sticking around. Now I'm going to give you what I think is the cool tip. I'm a drummer that doesn't like to carry a bunch of crap around. So what I ended up doing, and one of the reasons why I didn't like to have those extra stands that I told you about, is because, again, I like to carry as little as possible. So what I've done here is virtually everything that I can is connected to this stand. And I believe this is the top of the line stand that Roland makes. It's really beefy, it's very strong, a lot of very thoughtful features in this stand. For instance, the horizontal poles will not spin at all in those clamps. I mean, you'll tighten them, sure, but sometimes, I mean, you've got drums on them and you're whacking them, you think it's gonna move and twist down like this. Not these. There are actually holes drilled inside of each tube so that when they fit into the clamp, it goes like that. That sucker is not moving and they don't twist. A lot of really great ideas with the clamps themselves, with some rubber linings so nothing scratches, but it grabs really tight. The only thing I really didn't like about it was no memory locks, really. I ended up having to buy memory locks for each one of the clamps, because it's great to be able to, if you need to fold this up to fit it into something, you just loosen your clamp a little bit and twist them in, but then you have a memory lock there to put everything back. They also do not include memory locks for your toms, and I don't even think there's like a divot or a dent for a memory lock to fit into, which I think is weird, because some guys pack up every time. They take all the drums off and put it into a bag. I don't, but when they put it back, it's guesswork again as to where it goes. Why don't they have memory clamps for them? I don't know. But I attach everything I can to the stand. The only things I really can't are the bass drum sitting on the floor and my throne. But the pedals. My pedals are attached to this rug. I cut little holes in the rug. I didn't have to drill anything into the pedals. Most pedals have little places you can put things. And I sat here and settled on where I want my pedals. Then I put some screws with some washers up through the rug and nuts going down and basically attach these pedals to this rug. So what I end up doing is I grab these bars, and I have someone help me because it's a little heavy, and I just pick this thing up and walk away. Then what's left here is the bass drum, the pedals, and the throne. I pack up the throne, take out the bass drum. I roll this, I undo the spring on the bass drum pedal so that the beaters lie flat. And I actually roll the rug up and fold it. I've also attached bungee cords to the edges of the rug. So when I roll it up, I go shunk, and it's just attached together. So this is what ends up happening. When I go into a gig, I have under one arm my rug and my throne. I just kind of walk in to get the lay of the land and look at the bar and I'm like, oh, this is where I'll be sitting. Put down my throne. I spread out my blanket. I just undo the bungee cord and it goes thump, and it spreads out, and my pedals have been ensconced in like layers of rug. I have done this for years. I've never broken a pedal, throwing it in and out of vans. Just trust me, I throw them. And I've never broken a pedal. And it's just right there. Everything is exactly right there. I have little marks on my rug. I undo my throne, I put it down, and immediately my pedals and my throne are exactly where they need to be. And I can just sit here and go, guys, bandmates, this is where I'm sitting. Avoid the rug. Like, this is it. The nice thing is I bought an extra large rug specifically for the front. I sat towards the back of it. So there's an extra 1.5 feet easily of round rug out there. And what they end up doing is, you know, cables get going across the stage all the time. We pull the rug up, we put the cable down, lay the rug down. It's great. Then I get a friend and I say, hey, help me with the cage. The cage is in the back of my van completely together. The only thing that's not on the cage is the brain. I take the brain off, and I have everything labeled, of course, so it's very easy. Even a bass player can set it up. Just kidding. And I put the brain in its own case because it's expensive and it's fragile. It needs to be taken care of. But that's the only thing I take off of here. I unplug the bass drum, of course. We go out to the van and pull it out, and it's essentially in the shape of a U. I just pull these two arms in so it can fit in the van as it is. The van is tall enough. All I have to do is really loosen those clamps and put the arms down a little bit. Hence the memory locks, so they go right back into place really easily. So we walk it in and set it down. There's marks on the rug. I put it right where it needs to be every time, all the time, and I attach the brain. Everything's lined up, and then I hand the sound guy 2 chords, and I am ready to go. That's it. And the same in reverse. When I'm done, I shut the brain off and unplug the brain and unplug the bass drum. This thing is completely untethered at that point, really. I pull in the arms, and a friend of mine helps me out to the van, and we put it in. And in the van, if you could, like, this is the back of the van. This is the drum set. This is the cage, and it's kind of open. Then what do I put in here? Everything else. I put the brain in a little case, picked up the bass drum, put that in there. Then I fold up my, my throne, roll up my rug, put that in there. I'm done. I'm done. It is so easy. It is so nice. I can't tell you how much more quickly setup is when you attach your pedals to a rug. Now you need your rug to be big enough to wrap around it because it is protection for your pedals, right? But you can have some extra out front because that's just to cover cords or let people walk in front of you. Again, this is a round rug that I got off of Facebook Marketplace for $10, and I sit towards the back of it so the round part's way out front. And again, there's about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet of round rug out front to just, you know, get a little space there. But I decided to try that idea, and it was great. It ends up being great. So that's why, when I was telling you before, I don't want a hi-hat stand and all that, because my hi-hat pedal, the controller, is right down here attached to the rug at all times. I put it on once, that's it. So, you know, I mean, you take the cord out for the controller, just unplug it, but that's it. And what's nice, the hi-hat does not have to be in a straight line with where your pedal is. It can be anywhere because you don't have a stand. You can put your double bass drum pedal or anything else down here because you don't have a snare stand. You don't have to take the snare off. You don't have to carry a snare stand around or buy one or any of that stuff. It's all attached to this cage. You bought the cage. Use it, right? Everything is attached to it, and it's just awesome. So basically what I have here is a 6-piece kit, right? But with the BT1s, I have an extra tom over here, so it's kind of a 7-piece kit. And I can put toms up here. I used to have a high tom up here for my rototom kit. I built a rototom kit, decided to have some fun with that one. So I used to have a really high one up there. Oh, there it is. I have to fix that chord. Sorry about that. So we're talking about a 6, 7, 8-piece kit when you break it down, all sitting on this cage essentially with extra, percussion, 3 crashes, effect cymbals, and a hi-hat, a ride cymbal and 2 hi-hats. What if you had to carry all that crap around? I'm sorry. Hook it all to your cage and put the rest on the floor. It's so nice and it's so easy to set up because, again, you kind of stake your place out with the rug. You go in first with your rug and your throne and just go, oh, here's the corner, here's where I'm sitting. Bleh. There you go. Stay away from my stuff. Like I'm setting up here. Give me this space. And it's just, and this is your space. This is your area. So if people need to set up amps around you, they can kind of look at your rug and go, well, he's not going outside of this rug. And they just put it there. It makes it so much easier. I don't know how many times I've gone in to set up. And guitarists and stuff have set up things, or at least sat them down right where I'm going to be setting up. Like, I need to get set up. I take the longest of anyone. Get out of my way. So I don't know how many times I've come in and had to move other people's things first before I can set up. So the easiest thing to do is as soon as I get there, I just walk in with the rug. Blip, put it down. That's mine. And my pedals are already set up. Like your pedals and your throne being here, that sets the tone for where everything else is. And then you have all these little marks that no one sees anyway, because once you put it down, they're covered. I mean, it's great. I love it. Hopefully you'll love it too. But again, I do not mean to give out misinformation at all. These are just my opinions. Some people don't care about the extra stands and the extra weight and the extra money and packing in and packing out. And they really want to play around with the sounds and buy extra things from V Expressions and add all this stuff and program to their little heart's content, and they want that digital this and that. Have at it. Just in my opinion, for that extra money, then the extra money for the brain, the extra money for the digital ride, the extra money for the digital snare, the extra money for the stand you need, the extra money for the other stuff you need, and then to carry it around and the weight and blah, blah, blah. I'd just rather have the TD-30 because you can still change those sounds, as you noticed, to have some really cool stuff in here. I'll just do something really quick for you. This is one of my rock kits. Right? Brushes. That's great. Here's kind of a kit I use for like a blues, rocky blues stuff. And then I can get one a little bit more in Nashville. Right? Then I can turn around and get crazy and Anyway, so that's it. Never meant to mislead anyone about the size of the cymbals and the pads. Sorry about that. I think it used to be true, but it isn't anymore. But I think I'm right about the sounds. You only get so many sounds on the TD-50, and you can change them from there in this ridiculous line of parameters. But it's that sound you're changing. And I wanted more baseline sounds to change. I didn't want 5 snares to change. I wanted 25 snares to change. And that's what you get on the TD-30. You're not changing an acrylic into a maple into a titanium. You're only messing with the titanium sound. Or in the case of the TD-50, the Jarrah ply, wherever the hell that is. Anyway, so I'll leave you with some sounds here. As you can tell, I'm not that good. I'm a bit of a meat and potatoes drummer here. I'm still learning doubles, for crying out loud. But the stuff sounds cool, and I do have a couple of fun lesson errors when I was learning things that I'll talk about later. You might find amusing. Anyway, keep playing.